Now, in spite of the Labour government increasing deportations, some human rights advocates are reportedly growing frustrated with Sir Keir Starmer for failing to target smuggling gangs that are bringing, the smashing the gangs thing? Well, it's not working. The Mail newspaper today is reporting that nearly 1,500 migrants are waiting to cross the Channel in Calais, with squalor, disease and crime on the rise in the area. How many times have we done this story? Home Office stats show that around 24,000 have been trafficked on boats across the Channel since Labour came to power last summer. But what is the best way to tackle this problem? Now, this new camp is in 2 warehouses that many people living in Calais aren't even aware of yet. But it's still growing, more are coming. Joining me now is Kevin Saunders, the former Chief Immigration Officer at UK Border Force. Kevin, thank you for joining me this afternoon. Thank you for joining me all the previous times we've talked about this, and we keep talking about it. The Calais problem, why is it not going away?
Hello, Dawn. Well, it's not going away because the French won't move it away. You're quite right about the warehouses. What happens in France, and in particular in Calais, in the winter months, is that the French authorities open up a couple of old warehouses to accommodate the people. They don't like them sleeping rough during the winter months because it's too cold, so they open up a couple of warehouses and let them move in, which they've done again this year. So it's a regular thing. But I would suggest that 1,500 migrants waiting in Calais is probably an underestimate. I would put it much higher than that, because we haven't had the people coming across the Channel recently in large numbers because the weather's been so bad. So I suspect there are probably in the area an awful lot more than 1,500 waiting to come across.
And as usual, Kevin, we read in this report in the Mail today that most of them, the vast majority, are young men, very few women and children. Thankfully, very few women and children, given the conditions they're living in. But it just is still not going away. Why don't the French do anything?
Well, because the French want to get rid of them. And the French view is that if they want to go across the Channel, let them go. Let them go. It's an English problem. And in fact, the French politicians have said it's all your fault, basically, because you are too generous. You give them too much. And, it's an interesting argument. Other people will disagree. They say we don't give them enough. Yeah, but that is the French view.
That's the problem. I remember the French Interior Minister saying that, Kevin. He was saying, that the problem is you're a soft touch. The thing is, when we try and get tough, a bit like the French do, by letting them live in tents rather than putting them up in hotels that we do, we're racist, but the French can get away with it.
Oh, yes. The French can get away with murder. They do all the time. Until we can get Europe to actually agree to behave by the rules and take these people back, we will never solve the problem. These people, the migrants, are all coming from safe countries. They just don't want to be in Europe because they don't get as much in Europe as they'll get in the UK.
Kevin, thank you very much. That's Kevin Saunders, former Chief Immigration Officer at UK Border Force. Kevin, thank you very much for joining me now. Right, I've got Benjamin Butterworth and Claire Muldoon with me. Yeah, and Claire is smiling a lot today. She smiles a lot. She's a lovely, happy person. OK, but she's not going to be, because this is a very annoying story, isn't it? Right. OK, so I'm just going to read this out from the Mail report today. Most of those in the Calais warehouses are, as you've just heard me discuss, young men. And most have been thrown out. This is the bit that's going to annoy you. Most have been thrown out of Italy, which they reached by boat from Libya. Now, the Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, is tightening her country's borders. And this week she promised anyone entering Italy illegally on boats in future would be refused sanctuary rights. So she's in control of her borders. She says, I'm quoting George Maloney here, she says, "We will defend our identity, God, homeland and family." This is an ongoing process of Islamicization of Europe, and it's very distant from the values of Italian civilization. So, and if you read into this piece, many of the migrants in this camp have fled Italy because they're no longer welcome there. And I'm just reading another piece out. Every migrant in Europe, this is from a direct quote from a migrant, every migrant in Europe now thinks that Britain is their best bet. Benjamin, that's very annoying. Why can Italy get away with taking control of their borders, being tough? The French let them sleep in tents. We put them in hotels.
Well,
we really are a soft touch.
I mean, Keir Starmer has been meeting with Giorgia Meloni on more than one occasion to discuss what can be replicated from her policy. I suppose what this illustrates, though, is that while that's worked for Italy, it's damaged France, the rest of mainland Europe, the UK, because people are then going on to other countries. And it shows that there'll be no resolution to this without countries agreeing between them. Otherwise, you end up with one taking a wildly disproportionate number of migrants, as the UK may end up doing. And so I think that's one of the lessons to take from this.
Claire?
I just think that nothing's worked. When we were in Europe, it didn't work. After Brexit, it hasn't worked either. We have to take control of this. The only way I can see it working is if they start the processing centres, perhaps in Calais, right? They need a cross-party allegiance over this because it's gone from Conservatives to Labour now and they still don't know what to do with it. So I think we should get a cross-party think tank going, and they need to include people from the maritime unions and agencies and also Border Force. These are people that are dealing with these illegal immigrants, asylum seekers, day in, day out. And we really need to get a grip of it, because I think the rise in Islam is just degrading the country and making it unsafe.
Well, I mean, look, clearly it's a massive problem that we have these number of people coming in. And the problem is that you don't know who they are, you don't track them when you're here, and there's lots of examples where these people have been associated to serious allegations. I think last week, Sue Reid, the person who did this very story...
about Sweden, yes.
Yeah, a sharp rise in rapes and sexual assaults in Sweden, a country that historically had very low immigration and was a pretty homogenous society that has been transformed in some ways by this. So clearly the threat is there. But it's obviously, you know, there's no simple answer, because if there were, I suspect governments would have done it.
But why? This is the problem many of you are having trouble understanding out there, and I'm completely with you on this one. Why is it acceptable in France for the migrants to be in these awful tents? I mean, no one's saying they should be kept in these conditions. It's terrible. It's appalling. Many of them are getting very, very ill. But in the UK, we have to spend millions of pounds putting them up in hotels.
Or repatriating them.
Yeah.
And I think the optic has to be on why they're leaving the countries that they are. What have we done, if we have done anything, to make those countries so unsafe for them? Or indeed, if we haven't done anything, why are they leaving anyway? There's something going on, and they are traditionally all men. Look what happened to Italy and Lampedusa. Was it last year or the year before? Loads of African males were absolutely landed there, and the population of Italy and the people who lived there didn't want it, and they felt unsafe and they felt threatened. Giorgia Meloni, I doff cap. I think you're doing a great job, and I wish we had someone with such great strength of character as yourself running our country.
Yeah, and the vast majority of people living here are from the Sudan. The last time I'm aware, it's not a country that we've interfered with.
No, but Sudan is probably the most dangerous country on earth at the moment. It's embroiled in horrendous conflict, and so you know the borders are completely closed to Sudan. Nobody can get in, but clearly people are getting out. Yeah, going up sort of through Egypt and Libya and making it across to Italy. I do think this illustrates one of the mistakes that Donald Trump is making with closing the US Agency for International Development. You know, when you ask the question of why are they leaving these places, there are lots of reasons, but if you don't try and do our bit in international development to stabilise and give basics to these drastically poor and unstable parts of the world, then you are ultimately creating a factor which makes them come to our country.
Africa is one of the most corrupt continents in the world.
You were saying we increase foreign aid and we stop this problem.
Well, international development goes a long way to helping these countries have the basics to try and build their own economies.
Trump was perfectly within his rights to do what he did, and I'm glad that he has.
Well, he's not, because millions of people could die of HIV and AIDS from what he's done.
Well, the people that are living in that country have to deal with their own issues. They can't keep going.
Comment.
It's not a hideous comment at all.
It is.
They can't keep going, cap in hand, to other countries and relying on other countries to get them out of their hole.
So tell me, if you're I just got back from Mauritania, which is one of the poorest places on earth, okay? And I spent 7-8 days living with people there, right? Tell me how someone in the middle of the Sahara, a woman with a whole host of kids because they don't have contraception. Now, in this country, HIV
That's
doesn't...
got nothing to do with it.
Hang on, let me finish. In this country, HIV doesn't kill you, but in a country like that, you're quite likely to develop AIDS because you've not got the medication. So let's say they've contracted that and their kid contracts that. They've got absolutely nothing. What, you think they should just die? I think
the country should take care of it.
But they have no money. They have no money in the first place.
Why have they got no money? Why have they got no money?
Well, Mauritania isn't corrupt, so that's not a great example.
So we'll give another example then.
Many of them are corrupt, right?
Lots of them are. It's
because people have taken advantage. The people that live in these countries, when it comes to basic health care, getting malaria or contracting HIV and developing AIDS, the fact that we send medical supplies to save those people's lives is a basic Christian responsibility as a Christian country.
Yeah. That is, but they don't get the money. When the money is sent over, it's so corrupt, they don't.
Well, they do, because...
They don't. MSF Holland, the Red Cross, Amnesty International, they're all tainted with the same thing. When the money goes in, children in need as well, when the money goes in, it doesn't go to those poor women that are treated with HIV, they don't get the treatment. With malaria, they're not treated. That's the problem.
That's an insane generalisation.
It's not.
And the estimates are that USAID has saved 26 million lives that could have been died from HIV and AIDS.
Well, they need to save 26 million in their own country.
Thank you very much.
Well, they won't, because they'll obviously die.